Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome to my review for The Walking Dead Season 11, Episode 7, which was titled Promises Broken. So, we're going to obviously have some of the non-spoiler section first. Only going to talk about that for about 2 or 3 minutes, because it's a lot of stuff that I want to talk about in this episode that is definitely spoiler-ly type stuff. And then we'll jump into spoilers right after that, as we always do. So for the non-spoiler section, what do I think about this episode? Pretty much on par with a lot of the other episodes this season. It's just okay. It's just fine. It's like a decent episode that I think was good in a lot of places, but there's one thing in particular that really bugged me, and we're going to get into that with the spoilers section. But this episode was split up between 3 different storylines. You had stuff with the Commonwealth, which had a lot of progression with the story. You had stuff with Daryl and Leah, and them just doing stuff out on the road. And then you had some scenes with Maggie, Negan, Elijah, and Gabriel, and they were kind of planning on what they were going to do about this whole Reaper situation. And that was the only 3 storylines that went on in this episode. There was no Alexandria, none of that, just with these 3 separate stories. And I think they did a good job of kind of pacing this episode. I still feel this way. This season is going a bit slow. I was okay with some slow episodes in the past. You know, we've had slow episodes before, but because this is the final season, I think I treat it a little bit differently. I'm just really wanting them to push things forward, because I fully expected at this point in the season that we would already be like having the Commonwealth storyline in full force, like having, you know, our characters from Alexandria meeting with them and stuff kind of going on from there. Possibly introducing little bits of the CRM group and leading that into 11B, but we're not even close to that. Like, we're probably not going to get that till like next season, or like next half season, 11B, which is okay, but they're just taking so damn long to get there, and it's kind of worrisome because it's like we only have 16 episodes left after this half season, and there's a lot to wrap up. You know, if they were just doing the comic book ending, then I guess they could wrap it up pretty easily. But the issue is we have so many loose ends that I want to be tied up with this show. Like, for example, Rick and Michonne. There's a lot of loose ends they need to tie up. And we have this whole Reaper storyline shoved in here, which the Reaper storyline, I was kind of expecting it to be like a Wolf situation, where it was just these characters that just come in for this little conflict that kind of is over within an episode or 2. But they've been here for a while, and they're probably going to stay around for at least a little bit, which I think is okay, because they did focus the whole damn episode on them. So I prefer they did focus on them a little bit if they're going to do stuff like that, because there's a lot of scenes with them here, and there's a lot of cool stuff with them, specifically with Leah. I do find her character to be kind of interesting, and I'm actually curious to see where it goes from here and how it could affect Daryl. But it needs to have good payoff, and I'm hoping that episode 8 could give us that payoff, because this episode obviously doesn't really have much payoff with this Reaper story, and it feels kind of small because Alexandria isn't really involved in it. It's kind of just a couple characters on the road, but everyone back at Alexandria, none of them are really involved in what's going on with Reapers. I think there could be more interesting conflicts going on here if there was that looming threat of the Reapers still at Alexandria, but it's kind of like just this on the road thing with just a couple of our characters. There's really only 5 characters involved right now. I mean, you have Maggie, Negan, Elijah, Gabriel, and Daryl. Really, like, who else is really involved with this? But the episode itself was still really damn enjoyable in terms of a lot of its can't even say that word, cinematography. There was some good action, a couple different scenes that were well shot. The show was well shot, like, I can't deny that. There's a lot of good stuff with its directing, and sometimes the shots they give for different scenes and different conversations between characters. They have good angles on these shots, and I definitely like that a lot. So I'm gonna give this episode a rating. I'm gonna give it a 7.4 out of 10. The thing that bugged me is pretty big, but I have to talk about that in the spoilers because it wouldn't make sense to talk about it here. But 7.4 sounds good for this episode. Let's get into spoilers. So starting off with the great stuff about the episode, that conversation with Maggie and Negan was probably my favorite scene of this entire season, although I do still think it's weird that Negan would say that. But Negan does say to Maggie, and I do like how he clarified this, that The only way this is going to work between us is if we're honest with each other, right? And he was shooting straight with her, and that's kind of what he was saying in the episode. Like, he's an honest person, he's a man of his word, he's not going to lie to her. And he straight up said, if, you know, what happened with them back in season 6 and 7 happened today, he would have done things differently today. And Maggie's like, oh, how would he have done things differently? And he's like, I would have just killed you all. It was like a surprising thing for him to say in that moment, but only thing I have an issue with is I still think Negan, I want Negan to just not necessarily apologize, but just admit his false logic in some of the instances back in those earlier seasons. I understand where he's coming from, where he's saying these certain things and how he's like, yes, I would have done things differently, and yes, I'm not that type of person anymore, but can he just like explain that to Maggie so Maggie can at least understand him a little bit more, like maybe clarify that he wouldn't have done the... Because he did terrible things beyond just killing Glenn, obviously, and I don't really like how he's not clarifying those things. He's kind of just like, oh, I did what I had to do. I get he's not completely changing himself, he's still Negan, but like, I feel like I just don't like what they're doing with Negan in that context. But I do like what they're doing with him in other contexts. It's kind of hard to explain, but I think you guys know what I mean. Like, I really like a lot of the stuff they're doing with him, but it's like, you have to push it a little bit more, and I feel like Negan has become this point where he is very different than he was before, although he still has that same Negan backbone, where yes, he is willing to do whatever it takes to protect people that he cares about, right? And in that case, when he was, you know, the savior leader, he did care about the other saviors. But I know he's not a terrible, awful person anymore, and I feel like if he was to just admit some of his terrible, awful things that he's done, it would help a lot. Like, very much, because I feel like his character has been kind of saying things that kind of are inconsistent almost throughout these past couple seasons. Like, I feel like at certain points he's like, he would never do anything like he did in the past. He even told Judith, I'm never gonna hurt anyone, even if they try to hurt me. But then now he's telling Maggie, I will just kill anyone. He just says very different things, and I don't feel like they have a clear direction for his character, and they're just kind of doing things as they go along. That's what it feels like. I love his character. He's my favorite character on the show right now, which is why I care so much about how they handle him. And I just feel like they can handle him much better than how they are. That's kind of what I'm getting at. But that doesn't change the fact that that scene was incredible. I think a big part of that was Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Lauren Cohan's acting in this scene. That was definitely probably one of the best things about it. But I just think they could be doing better stuff with Negan. And that would have made that scene even better. Like if Negan said something along the lines of like, I did, like, admit that he was doing terrible things to Maggie. Admit that it was horrible what he did, rather than just being like, yeah, I would have just killed all you. It's like, okay, yeah, you're being honest, but like, I don't really believe Negan would say that in that moment, to be honest. I don't. I believe Negan's an honest person, but I don't believe he fully believes that he would even do that. I'm not the writer of Negan, so I can't speak for what the character should and shouldn't be, but I'm just saying my own opinion. That's how I feel about Negan. Everything else with that, like how they're using the whisper tactics to try to lead the walkers to Meridian, loved all that. I love how they're playing that story out, and I'm really hopeful that this next episode has a really awesome like battle showdown go down with these walkers. Meridian hopefully has a lot of, you know, shit to deal with when it comes to the walkers. Hopefully don't just skip over it. I want to see Meridian or the Reapers have to actually take out these walkers and see the struggle they go through with these walkers. Hopefully they make it good. I'm very hopeful there, but everything else there was good. I like that stuff. The Daryl and Leah stuff was also pretty good, although it wasn't doing anything crazy for the story, but it did develop Leah and Daryl very well because it shows Leah's good side, right? She went against Pope's orders and did not kill the people on the road, which is good for Daryl's character because now Daryl's gonna have a harder time letting her go. And I'm sure we're going to get to this point. It's pretty predictable. There's going to be a point in the season, I'm sure, whether it's next episode or next season, next half season, where Daryl has to either kill her or betray her or something. And it's going to be a lot harder now because he cares about her more, because he sees the good side of her. And she showed that in this episode. And I really like that. I would be mad if they kept making her bad, like if they made her just brutally murder these people. Then I'd be thinking to myself, Daryl, what the fuck are you doing with this girl? Get away from her. She's clearly not a good person, but showing these little bits of like good in her is good for Daryl's character and it's going to make the situation a little more complex. That's good. Everything there, Liked it. Now, the stuff that I wasn't crazy about, but I still enjoyed, the Commonwealth stuff. Okay, let's talk about the Commonwealth stuff. Although this stuff was good in terms of progressing the story, I wasn't a fan of the execution of it, and for one reason, really. There's no subtlety. That is what I have an issue with. It's like they're treating the fans like we're all so stupid and that we can't infer things on our own. So they just kind of spoon feed us these really inorganic moments that feel so just like out of like what, like people don't act this stupid. Like I know what they're trying to do. They're obviously trying to make it they want us to see that Commonwealth has this class system where, you know, they treat rich people much more, you know, respectfully than people who don't have as much money. But they go to such extreme lengths to show it, and it's like, you can have some subtlety. You don't have to have the soldiers storming in, grabbing people, like, oh, come here, and like this intense music, and then have characters do really stupid shit. I understand some of these characters are supposed to be dumb, like, for example, Pamela's son. He's not supposed to be a smart dude. He's not supposed to be respectful or nice. But you could have made that situation feel at least somewhat organic. Like, it doesn't, like, yes, people are dumb, I know, but that's another level of dumb that's hard for me to, like, understand or really be like, oh, this is an interesting situation, because it's really not interesting, because all I'm thinking in this situation is, are you, how dumb can you be? Because Eugene and fake Stephanie come and obviously save his damn life with this girl. And I know there was a similar situation in the comics. I know it was a very similar situation. I didn't like it in the comics either, though, so this isn't like, oh, it happened in the comics. I didn't like it in the comics either, to be honest. I didn't like a lot of stuff of the Commonwealth in the comics. I was hoping they would do it a little bit differently. Because it's like, you could have made there a situation here where maybe Eugene actually did something that would reasonably upset him, so then he could show off his douchebaggery in a more realistic manner, rather than just yelling at him for clearly saving his life. I know he's making a big deal out of nothing here because it's just what he does, because he's an asshole, but make it more subtle than that. I don't find very overt assholes to be interesting. I like it when they're more subtle with their douchebaggery. I keep using these weird words like douchebaggery, but you know what I mean. But it's just like, make it more subtle, make it more organic in a way that's like, okay, this guy's a piece of shit, but not like, oh, obviously this guy's a piece of shit. Like, there's no subtlety there when you're just overtly making him be this, like, it's not even a realistic asshole. Like, no one like that. People don't act like that in real life that normally. Sometimes they do, but like that in this scenario, it just doesn't feel right to me. Again, he's supposed to be like that. I'm glad they're doing that, but make it more organic than Eugene killing walkers to save his life, and then him being like, you attacked me. I know he's supposed to be like that, I know, but just make it organic. That was not organic. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And another thing, Lance too. Lance, he's his leader, right? He's a decently high position. He should not be that stupid, you know? He's not supposed to be that idiotic when he's like talking to Eugene and he's like, oh, you're not supposed to attack him, you're supposed to save him. And it's like, did you not see the dead walkers all around him? Well, very clearly Eugene saved his ass. Like, that's not, obviously, you should probably realize that. I get dumb people exist, but make it organic, please. Make it feel like real, so I'm actually more invested in it. It progressed the story, and I know they're leading this up, so it's making it more difficult for our survivors to get through things, and to obviously eventually, which I'm sure they're going to go down this route where our crew is going to take over the community of some sort, and kind of become the leaders, because they'll be like, yo, what the hell, how are you running things like this? This isn't right. But make it in a more organic way, where there's actually an interesting divide between the different classes and stuff, not very overtly and very much spoon feeding the audience to be like, okay, this is what's happening. Make it more inferable and subtle, and I feel like that would make the story much interesting. That's just my opinion. I'm sure people don't give a shit. I'm sure people are completely fine with them making it that way, but it just doesn't feel right when they make it very much not subtle. I like subtlety. I think subtlety is great, and I don't think this episode really did that with the Commonwealth stuff specifically. I know why they do that. It's just because there's a lot of fans who probably wouldn't be able to catch on to those little subtle moments as much as some people would. Therefore, they're trying to make it very obvious as to how the situation's going in this community. Like characters like Morgan, for example, he's one of my favorite characters because he has a lot of things about him that you really wouldn't understand unless you kind of analyze his character, which is why a lot of people always said Morgan's this inconsistent character. But it's like, no, if you really look deep into his character, you can probably realize that he clearly has a lot of different mental disorders going on. I think one of the clear ones is some sort of a personality disorder of some sort, because Morgan was going back and forth between these different like mentalities really quickly. And I really liked how subtle that was, because yes, his character was being very overt in terms of his actions, but it wasn't like a character came out and was like, oh, Morgan, is this or that. It was more like we have to kind of make our own inferences as to what's going on in Morgan's head, right? We had to make those inferences based on how he was acting. I like that a lot. I just feel like this storyline needs some of that subtlety, and it would be so much better, and I would probably enjoy it a lot more than I am. I'm still enjoying it. 7.4 out of 10 is a pretty damn good score. People act like that's a terrible score. It's a good score. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'll see you all in my next one. Peace out.